Where are all my friends? Micah Heykoop. Hey, dude. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to be in your living room.
Yeah. I felt so seen right before we started recording. You're like, bro, this is a bit of a setup. And I was like, oh my God, thank you.
It's an insane setup. After the podcast that we did, which was like a laptop and two very loosely held like at our agency.
You like hear the fucking hand.
Bro, it was terrible. You'd be like holding like a piece of foam, like trying to talk next to it in a room. The echo is not cute. Yeah.
I didn't know you had a podcast though, and I'm sure that'll tie into the story.
We did 3 seasons of a podcast, which was like 60 something episodes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was cool, but it was too generic. Like,
really?
It was like agency stuff where you're just like, oh, so you have this like beauty company. You're like, great. How'd you found it? Cool. And like, I don't know. We were never like, oh, it's about blank. It's like exactly this.
Yeah.
It was and like we did cool ones. Like we did like the founder of Care of, the founder of Quip. Like we were doing like a lot of D2C. Some of that stuff's like amazing. But at the same time, it's still like, I don't know. We either needed to go longer form with it and be like, oh, we're trying to get places, or we needed to go more tactical with it. And that was like, we never fully got there. So it's like cool. It's called Sessions. They're good lessons to go back and check out.
Yeah.
But we also did episodes where it's just me being like, I'm going to explain Google Analytics in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I would just be like, all right, here's everything you need to know about Google Analytics. It's not that complicated. Just do this and this. Great. Bye. And I think that was like a better version of a podcast.
I was going to say, that sounds good. That's intriguing to me because I have a lot to learn about your story and like what you're so good at professionally. I've only seen like little bits through our friendship at Race Service and that like mutual. But as we learn, I'm curious because I think that there is great value to a podcast, and I've never heard of like an agency doing one. So that's cool that you did it. And I'm curious of like did you have an ROI on it at the end? Like, do you think it was worth it?
For sure. But because like agencies are expensive to work with. So you're like, how can you let people know what your mindset's like for free?
Yeah.
Right. And so that was that. But before Sessions, we did this thing called Shapeshift Report. And it was like, it started as like a client only monthly deck that we would send out. It started like right when the agency started 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, here's like cool articles, like trends, like, but it was like, if you were a client, you got it.
Whoa.
And then it turned into a PDF that you could sign up for and we'd send out. And we had 12 themes, but the themes repeated. So every January was the resolutions issue. And it was all about like brand resolutions for the year.
Yeah.
Every like March was the future issue. It was all about like what's going to come down the pipe, whatever. And we did 5 years of it, and it ended up turning from like, it was like a 60, 70 page PDF we were producing every month that was like interviews, original photo shoots, whatever, and then turned into like a fully interactive website. It was crazy. And that like helped us get, that was like how we got Lululemon as a client. That's how we got W Hotels as a client. It was like,
okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm curious because like, I think that is like sharing knowledge for free, and like showing that is so valuable.
For sure. Otherwise, like you're only as good as like whatever work you're doing.
Yeah.
Which is an agency, like you rarely have control over the final product.
Yeah.
Right. Like your version of what's cool and the client's version of what they need are very different.
It's rare that they end up at the same as the finished product.
Yeah. We did that for years and it was great. And that then like kind of the podcast was like, all right, a lighter lift version. And it was also like a way that Chelsea, my business partner, and I could like talk directly to people. And that was it. That was like, I think we always tried to have some kind of like IP.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all right. Well, we need to get.
I've interrupted the intro.
No. I actually love that because I think that like when I listen to a podcast and they instantly start talking about something actually interesting, I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. Like it's not just the small talk bit.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that, but it is definitely a preview towards what your life and career got to of this agency, and I need to learn a lot about that. Yeah. But how I typically start is just the quick explanation for somebody who doesn't know who you are, like who you are and what you do now, and then we'll take it back and kind of like reverse engineer how we got there.
For sure. So my name is Micah Heykoop. Yeah. I am the managing director and a partner at the brand studio Another. And then I'm also the co-founder of an agency called Candid Network.
Sick.
Yeah.
Okay. So then that pretty good formal title, all that.
Yeah.
The reason that I was excited to have you on was my first impression of you and a couple of the things that I know that you're a part of. That's funny. Let's see if we can I'll fix it live.
Fix it.
Let's go.
See, this is like having a nice car. The nicer the setup, the more shit that you can break.
Yeah.
But these, you got me feeling like Dax Shepard with this microphone.
You feel like Dax Shepard?
I don't know because I don't listen to that podcast, but I imagine he has this microphone.
So the reason that I was excited to have you on is I've seen a little bit of what you've done from outside, and there's a couple projects, like Highly Likely is something that I'm curious of, and I know you're like involved, but I don't know fully. But there's just a lot to your career that I think I could learn from. And it's rare. I mean, I'm 170 episodes deep. When I have somebody on that's, yeah, dog. So when I have somebody on that's like has a new skill set or a new thing of knowledge, a career that I haven't heard of, I'm fascinated. And that's why I was so excited to have you. So that's where you're at now. Mm-hmm. And I guess like, what does that mean? Like in a simple version of like, you have an agency.
Yeah.
You've like, as you were saying with the podcast, the newsletter, you've worked with like pretty big brands.
Yeah.
What is your day-to-day like what are you currently doing?
Yeah.
What's that actually look like?
I mean, on the another side, the managing director's like your strategy, right? Like you're like, all right, strategy with like, how do we handle clients? What are the type of clients we want to bring in? How do we structure the work that we're doing with them?
Yeah.
And then you're also like, and the way it's shaken out for me is like strategy in terms of like, who do we have on the team? How, like, what are like the processes we have? How does everyone feel emotionally? Like I've like,
you're very like people oriented.
Yeah. And I think that like Chelsea, who founded the agency and then who I came on as a partner, like we were originally called Matte Black and now we're called Another. We changed our name like 3 or 4 years ago, but she's always had like a great vision and like, she's like the hardest worker, the best visual person, the best designer, whatever.
Sick.
And is like, has like a style of leadership that's so like, she's so good at the work and enjoys being in the work and like also enjoys the people side, but like she needs a person, or I think needed a person who could be like much more like, okay, like I'm going to help you guys through this. Like, how are you feeling? Like, whoa. Okay, like what, all of that stuff that like, helps people feel like they can be taken care of in that way.
Yeah.
She's great at that as well. Just like I'm good at being in the work, but like we definitely have opposite skill sets. And so like, yeah, managing director is normally just like, how are we going to make the money that we need to make? Yeah. Is this a good client for us to take? Is this a good project? And then at the end of the day, it's just like, all right, guys, like, how are we feeling and how can I help you get to like out of the roadblock we're at in this project.
Interesting.
And like I came in and led strategy in terms of like brand strategy. So I'll still be like the main brand strategist on a lot of the stuff that we do.
But in a simple explanation though, like you kind of come in and just like fix shit then. Like
yeah. I mean, there's for sure. I think there's less like, I hope maybe jumpstart. And then if we ever come to a roadblock, I like try to give perspective on like, oh, like if we thought about this or we tried this.
Yeah.
I think like everyone's much better at what they do at the agency than I am. And so it's more just like, you just have like outside perspective of like, oh, like, remember the client said they wanted this, or like, hey guys, like this is a lot of, I feel like in brand is you have to just be able to look and be like, guys, you're not saying anything with this. Like if you took all the logos off this page, like you've not made a big statement about like this brand.
Yes.
Especially now, like we work like so much in like beauty or hospitality or whatever. Like so much of that stuff's the same. Like we're like clean beauty that's like ethically sourced and like good for you, that makes you feel confident. And so many brands are like, no, we're not really selling this. We're selling confidence. You're like, but then like, why are you even start? Like you don't have a unique proposition at all.
Yeah. Like the people that think they're unique and it's like, no, but we're different because it's not about the product. It's about how you feel. You're like, okay, but that's
there's so many people. Yeah. I mean, it's everyone now. So I think it's a lot of just like helping be like, all right, cool. Like, are we deeper than that? Are we like getting to another layer below that where it's like we said something that like only this brand could say?
Whoa.
And hopefully we arrive there. A lot of the times we don't.
I love how you just explained that, because like the moment where I was like, damn, I fuck with you, was when you came to Race Service and there was a client project that everybody was working on and it was like this huge idea. But it took you like wrangling everybody in, and we were talking about like all these things of like, what can it be and how's this work and all that.
Yeah.
And you had a very systematic, intentional, strategic way to take that and to funnel it and to categorize it. And I think that's really impressive to me, as and I'm definitely still a student, but as I am around agency work, creative work, working with giant clients and brands and companies.
Yeah.
on the business side. And then you also have these creatives that are great at making anything, but that's maybe a curse because they can make anything.
Yeah.
And you did such a good job taking both sides of that and categorizing it and asking the right questions to say, why are you doing this? Why do you care? Why should they care? And that's like this skill that's kind of hard to simply state, but I think is so valuable. And again, kind of why I was so intrigued in talking to you and learning.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that comes from, like, that specifically comes from when you make content, or I'll say like production. Like, so we both do like, or both of our agencies do like production work in different ways, but like you can become really comfortable in execution.
Yeah.
And you say like, I'm most comfortable when we're making the thing.
Yeah.
So all of your ideas, everything you talk about, all of your strategy is just how quickly do we get to making stuff?
Yeah.
Right. Versus the idea of being like, does the dog know why it wants to catch the squirrel? Right. Like making content's the idea of like, let's go catch the squirrel. Versus, and like once you get it, like, because you could just be like, and then what? What are you gonna do with that video?
Yeah.
Then what? What are you gonna do with that? And so I think like real confidence in your creative work is the idea of like, from the strategy standpoint, we can tell you why we're going to do this, what it means if we do this right, and where we're going to end up when we do this right. Right. And these are the types of things that are going to work. But we could get you 30 versions of ideas inside of it. Right. And like, I think it's harder to be confident. And like, I handed you like a 30-page deck and it's like, this is the plan. Now let's go execute. It's like everyone can wrap their head a little bit more around the idea of like, we're going to shoot this commercial. It's going to look like this. Here's mood boards. And it's just like, you're skipping a lot of the, what I think is like the why behind it.
Right.
And so I think it's the idea of just like agencies that are good or comfortable in execution.
Yeah.
But unfortunately you can like get to the place where you use execution as like the crutch to like never really having to think about like why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, like really defining the why first.
For sure.
Where did that skill come from? Because like that's something that I think that in this day and age, a ton of the people that listen to this podcast like are a creative in some regard and are probably having to do their own kind of business and these things come up. And I think it's so valuable. So like where, if somebody feels that way, like they're a creative and they have the skill, but they don't have that like strategy side, like where did you learn that? I'm so curious. And maybe that comes into your origin story a little bit.
Yeah, I had like an insanely good first job. And I was at Tom's, I guess then the footwear company, and now they're like the 1-for-1 company. And I interned in 2010, I think.
Wow.
And so it was like, I got really lucky because like they had like 14,000 applicants for internships and there was like 7 interns. And so it was this thing, because at the time it was like, oh, this company's like really cool, you know, whatever, like they have this amazing internship program. I ended up like kind of sliding in because I'd interned at Volcom before. when I was a freshman in college, and I'd got that because I made t-shirts when I was in high school. I like screen printed. I had like my own t-shirt brand.
Okay.
And then my vice principal knew the guy who ran like planning and analysis at Volcom. So I had like a planning and analysis. They put me on the design team, which was really funny because I didn't know how to use Photoshop. And so I was on the design team at Volcom when I was like 19, which is like truly bad in hindsight because it's just like I have no design skills.
So
then I moved to planning and analysis, did an internship there. They then like knew someone at Tom. So it was like one of those things where you're like right place, right time. Like I made shirts and that helped. But also when you're just like, the world was pushing me forward. It was like very privileged in that way.
No, that's cool. That's an awareness. But I'm curious about planning and analysis because I think that at that point in somebody's career, not knowing Photoshop, but being at a company like Volcom was like one of your first jobs or internships. Like, that's kind of a flex. So like, I could see some people probably just being like, well, fuck, I guess I'll learn Photoshop. This is that. So it's interesting that there's a pivot.
I did. This guy, Ralph, taught me Photoshop. And the funniest thing is I then ran into Ralph. He works at Nike now.
No shit.
And so I saw him on an email. I was like, bro, is this Ralph from Volcom? And he's like, yeah. And
You're my
like,
Photoshop
dude, you
plug?
taught me how to, you taught me how to use Photoshop when I was 19. But yeah, like then the guy who got me the internship at Volcom ran planning and analysis. And so then when my internship was ending, I didn't want to leave. And so I was like, bro, like I'll come do this. And planning analysis was funny because he would be like, here's what all the buyers sold into Volcom accounts, like all of the SKUs, just cut out what they didn't sell enough of to meet minimums. And so you have this stupid, like at that point, 20-year-old kid who's just like, get rid of this SKU, get rid of this SKU, get rid of this SKU.
Whoa.
It was, I would say like I'm not sure how Volcom did during that time, but it was a super fun thing to be at.
Yeah.
All this to say, like, I end up at Tom's. When I'm an intern, we're poor Tom's. Right. My first day, they asked me to take the van. I drive to Home Depot. I steal pallets from behind the Home Depot, bring them back, tear them apart, put them back together to make a window display for Active Ride Shop at the Irvine Spectrum.
Holy shit.
And so like that was like Tom's in that moment.
Very scrappy. How many people?
Bro, it was insane at that moment. It was like 80 people.
Because that's interesting. There was a ton of applicants, but really when you get to it, it's still very scrappy and DIY.
Well, yeah, because I mean, bro, you're getting paid $12 an hour to be an intern, which I thought was sick because I did not get paid at Volcom. Like,
I'm rich.
I got paid like $12 an hour at Tom's, but it was a lot of that. It was like go to events. I was on the retail marketing team. Day one was kind of like a remake of my Volcom internship where I was just like, okay, what's retail marketing?
Yeah.
Right. I thought I tried to be the finance intern.
Whoa.
Yeah. And
okay. So this wasn't like some strategy thing. You were just trying to be a part of anything.
Bro, I was, I know, but I thought, I was like, I'll be finance. The guy that I have like an in with is retail marketing. So I'll be number 2. Yeah. The guy who ended up being the finance intern had left like Goldman Sachs and was like 26 and just wanted to live in LA for the summer. He was so sick and now runs like fucking BlackRock Capital. Like,
holy fuck. Like, okay, so he was like very qualified.
He's like very qualified and like very New York like private equity guy.
Yeah.
Which was hilarious because everyone else was like, you know, I was 20 at that point, which was very funny because we had Friday happy hours and they're like, all right, Micah, just so you know, like we have Snapple for you. Because I was like, because I was the only person at Tom's who was under 21.
Holy shit.
But yeah, I mean, that was like, so I'm in retail marketing strategy. I ended up like later in my life at Tom's. There's this guy, Pete Ferrer, who was like an executive at Nike. He started Nike 6.0. If you remember Nike 6.0 is when they did all of their action sports under one brand. It was like, right, surfing, snowboarding, skating. I can't remember the other 3, but they made it this standalone brand.
Was it like it almost looked like a painted logo?
Yeah, it was like a painted logo.
Yeah, I remember the visual.
They sponsored like the US Open of Surfing. They did all this stuff. So he did that. He left, went to Tom's. Tom's had like this insane, like, there was like grown-ups who were like huge executives at other companies who then believed in it. And there was like 10 of them. And then there was 70 people who were under 25.
No way.
Yeah. And so it was like this very odd, like it was cool, but that's just like what it took at that point. Mm-hmm. And he had this whole idea of like, what does winning look like today? Mm-hmm. And so he played football for Alabama. He pitched in the majors. Like he was like a Nike guy, right? Mm-hmm. And then was a really successful executive. And then he was just this idea of like, do you know what winning looks like today in this moment? Right. And it was like this idea of like, you're chunking everything up into such small bits that you're like, I know why we're trying to do the thing we're trying to do.
Incredible.
Right. And that was like the whole like strategy at the end of the day, like, strategy for dum-dums is like you make a chart and you go top right corner, right? Like you've seen that chart where it's like, luxury versus accessible and like, serious versus expressive. And you're like, everyone else is here and we're going to be in the top right. Like at the end of the day, you can just do dum-dum strategy and like, that's 50% of the work.
Incredible.
The other percent of it is just like your why is just like, I want to do this. So then what? Right. And like, as long as you can answer, like, there's a second step after this, like you probably have enough of a why to do the thing.
No way.
And I just think like we all skip that part a lot.
What you just said there so casually though, is a fucking college course in itself.
Maybe.
Like actually though, like, cause you're so familiar with it. But like that, somebody really, really understanding that, like I'm obsessed with finding those core lessons. Yeah. And you said it so casually, but if you can explain why there's a next step past the thing you're doing. Yeah. Like you could really dissect that and learn a lot from that.
The dog can't explain why it wants to catch the squirrel.
Yeah.
And I think there's like plenty to be said for things where you're just like, we're just doing it because we think it's going to get some attention or it's cool. Those things are also really good. Mm-hmm. They just can't be like, they're not the only strategy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or in my opinion. But yeah, man, like I going back, like I learned so much of who I was like formed, or who I am now was like formed by Tom's, in that like I had like amazing mentors who I still have today who believed in me. Mm-hmm. I had an internship. I was in retail marketing. I left to go finish college. They asked me, they very politely asked me to not finish college. And they were like, just stay. Just like, let's go. In hindsight, I should have done that.
Really?
Yeah, because who cares if you graduate college?
I mean, I'm on that team, but that's interesting.
Bro, I can't read a resume. So I go back. I had a year and a half of school left, and I condensed it down to 1 year. That was like the thing. So I did college in 3 years total.
Cool.
And so I was like, slammed it in. And then like 2 months before I graduated, Jill, who was my boss's boss, so like my boss's boss's boss at that point, called me. It's like, we have Tom's. We have a job for you. Because I was just waiting for them. I like knew, I was like, I'm going to go work at Tom's when I'm done with this.
Yeah.
They were like, you're going to be the trade show and special events coordinator. And I was like, great. And she's like, I want you to take all the time off after college you want. You could even take like 2 weeks if you need it. I was like, sick. Which is like very, if you knew her, this is like very her.
That's really good. I was ready. I thought you were going to say 2 years.
No, bro, she's incredible. She was like this kind of person who in a meeting, like you're in a meeting with a bunch of people and like you're talking about a thing and she would just be like, they would be like, oh, like, so who's working on this? She'd be like, oh yeah, Micah's going to take care of that. And that was her telling you it was your job to do it. Like you had never spoken about it before, but you were just like, okay, it is my job to do that. I end up coming back and I do trade shows and special events. And it's like, if you've ever been to like Project or Magic, like any of the fashion trade shows.
It's the fact that you're saying that is crazy because this is part of my career fascination tying in where I wasn't a part of it, but I grew up skateboarding, then kind of like music world doesn't.
So you saw like Agenda and you were like, this is the shit.
Yes. That's exactly what I was going to say is Agenda to me. I was like, what is this magic? But I've heard of people talking about magic.
My first Agenda was my first trade show ever was with Volcom. I went to Surf Expo when it was or not Surf Expo. It was called ASR.
Yeah.
Action Sports Retailer. It's the trade show that Agenda killed in San Francisco because Agenda would drive like a van over to ASR and try to get you to come to Agenda in San Diego. I think it's called ASR. I could be wrong.
I'm pretty sure you're right because I remember hearing people talk about it.
But that was my first one. And then when I came back and did trade shows, my first Agenda was at the fucking Hyatt in Huntington Beach.
Wow.
And it was everyone had a 10x10 booth. Like no one could do build outs. It wasn't in Long Beach yet. It wasn't they didn't have the Vegas one. They didn't have the New York one. So like I was going to run trade shows. And that was like, it's hard to like describe what trade shows are, but it's pretty much, it used to be all these retailers, buyers show up. They see you're looking 6 months ahead. They're placing orders on fucking triplicate paper for, what they're going to buy.
Yeah.
And so it's my job to make sure like all the sales reps had what they needed, get the booth there, make sure the booth got designed by the team. And this was like, it's just like the perfect thing. I was like still 20. I was about to turn 21. And like, that was like the North Star of just like, okay, we got to get this booth designed. And we had a 20x10 booth and a 10x10 booth. And to us, that was like
massive,
incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And Tom's was at this point where like, we wouldn't open new accounts, but everyone wanted Tom's because it was like the hottest shoe in the world. And so I remember going to Agenda and you literally couldn't get into our booth because there's so many people in it.
Oh my, and it was what just a cool feeling to be a part of like the rad brand.
But also when you're like, at that point, I was just like, baby, this is what it's like. And for like the next like couple of years, like, cause it like kept going.
Yeah.
And like when we were going to New York for the first time for ENK Kids. Mm-hmm. So there was like Capsule, which was like, oh, sick, like high end, whatever. ENK, which was kids, Project, which we didn't do Project New York because it was lame at the point. At that point, still probably never got cool. But like,
I'm unfamiliar, so I guess that's something.
Well, like at all trade shows that are like big national trade shows, there was Project in Las Vegas, which is a part of Magic, which is like 10 trade shows happening at once. Agenda, which was in LA or was in Long Beach. There was like Capsule in New York, or like ENK Kids was a big kid show outside of it. And then there's one in Atlanta, and then Surf Expo in Florida. And so if you do New York, Florida, Las Vegas, and California, you've covered all your regions.
Wow.
Right? You don't need to go. And then all your reps are going to small regional shows. So I would like get them the stuff they needed for those shows. You're worried about like samples shipping out, like all this stuff, merchandising on the shelf. I remember being like, all right, so in New York, like, bro, I'm telling it to my boss, Garrett, like it's expensive to stay there right now. I got to book 20 rooms. Like there's this Best Western, like we could do this thing. It's like $250 a night though. It's expensive, right? And he was like, oh no, man, we stay at the Standard. And so like cause I went from like stealing pallets to like showing back up and being like, oh, we're booking 20 people at like a $500 a night hotel for 6 nights each, and just being like, oh, just put on your, and having like $110,000 credit card bill for travel.
2 years old.
Yeah. And I was just like, I hadn't even I got kicked out of a bar in Vegas because I still wasn't 21. Dude. For the trade show circuit. And
what an insane, like that is so crazy that like you saw the preview of Palette Days, finish college, come back, and this company has exploded, and you're a part of it, and you get to learn from these people, and you get to be a part of that growth.
Yeah. And I think that was incredible. And I think the best lesson, like the 2 big lessons I learned is like, even though like, okay, cool, we're at like a nicer hotel, whatever, like we still treated like every dollar outside of that like it was our last. Mm-hmm. And so now like even my philosophy is like, how can we do the most for this brand with the least amount of money? Yeah. Because Tom's was just like, we didn't pay for catalog pages. We didn't do online advertising. There's like all this stuff where you're just like, yo, like, 1, we give away a bunch of stuff, so your margin's already hurt by that. And 2, like just philosophically, we don't like, we're going to go where we're wanted, and we're going to do things that we feel like we can get behind, right? We're still going to hand build, things for Active Ride Shop.
You wouldn't just go through the motions for the sake of it. Like everything was intentional.
No, everything was super intentional. Like there wasn't anything that I ever felt was like wasteful in a big way. There's 120 people. We were at this place called Santa Monica Studios, which was on Olympic and Bundy. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, I don't know. I think it was like a set to film on. They put 120 of us in there. We had 1 bathroom and 1 parking space.
Holy
so that was like the grind.
Dude, right? So you like really did see it go like crazy.
Yeah. And so we were doing that. I was doing trade shows. So I would go to, it's Groundhog Day. You go Long Beach, Vegas, New York, Florida, Long Beach, Vegas, New York, Florida. Yeah. And you're there 2 to 3 times a year for each of those. And then I did special events. So like Blake, the founder, would go do speaking events at like, like some of it was like Chick-fil-A Leader Cast, which is like a big leadership summit that Chick-fil-A puts on in Atlanta. Wow. And so it'd be all Atlanta-based brands. So it's Chick-fil-A, Coke, and Delta. And then like the special guest was Tom's. Or it would be like we worked with this super yacht marina in West Palm Beach, so I spent a lot of time in Florida because we were making a boat shoe and they were our partner. And we would go to like the Boys and Girls fundraiser of this thing. And then I would like go do that.
So that's like really where you earned your stripes. Like you just like
events are so gnarly.
Yeah.
Especially at that
I relate
level.
it to touring. Like that's to me, like it was like if you can travel around the country and the world and make shit happen with no resource and have to meet people and get really good at talking to people and really good at working with a team to build something out of nothing. Like that's a good skill.
Yeah. Some of the biggest like problem solving moments were like first time I did the first trade show we did with a new booth, the builders who made it didn't know how to make crates. So the crate fell apart. And so it's like a 8x8x10 crate. And so I had to rebuild that. With like, I had to rebuild a crate with just like scrap wood that I had. So it was like that. We had one time we were flying to Chicago to do like a speaking engagement. I called a Home Depot, sent them all this plywood and like all these measurements I needed so I could then go build a brand new booth. Like we had printed graphics, but like I had to build the whole wood booth and make a stock room. We sold like 1,200 pairs of shoes in a day.
Holy shit.
Like out of this thing. We did one time like in New York, we were at Javits Center. If you've ever been, it's like their big trade convention center that's like on the west side on one of the piers or like right next to one of the piers. Yeah. It's by Classic Car Club if you've ever been.
Oh, okay. Like, I know the location.
It's literally right. Yeah, it's right next to them. One graphic was like 12 feet long. It's in this tube and it didn't get there. It's like the whole backdrop for the booth. They wouldn't deliver it. And then they're like, hey, you can come pick it up. Yeah. And it was a snowstorm. I get in a cab. It's like 5 p.m. I go over there, I get the graphic and I realize the thing's too long to fit in a van. Like I don't have a car. And so I had to walk like 15 blocks in a snowstorm with this graphic back to the Javits. And just literally just straight up like carrying it over my shoulder. And you're just like, bro, I hate this, but I love this brand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. You're just like, it's like nice to be sold out in a moment for something like that. Yeah, man. And then we had like, oh, sorry, like a forklift hit one of your crates and like half of your booth is destroyed. And then you're like, cool, I guess we'll just like fucking rebuild it. Like, overnight.
Yeah. So that really did give you like your beginning grit and everything there.
Yeah.
So then
that was like the big first piece of advice I got was from that. I was like a year in and like burnt out. Yeah. And I was just like talking to my boss, Garrett, and I was like, bro, I just don't know like what I'm doing. Like, this is just like, I was just like, I'm exhausted. And he's like, man, like all I want you to remember is like, you're not becoming the best at doing project trade show. You're not becoming the best at events. You're becoming the best at like pulling people together, generating ideas. You're becoming the best at like communicating. You're becoming the best. It was like all these principles that he's like, this is everything. And as long as you focus on those things, you can go do whatever you want after this.
Yeah.
But this is what you're becoming good at right now. You're not good at trade shows.
Right.
And I was
like if you're not in the weeds, but you're in the clouds of it,
I was like,
realize,
yes, okay, I can get behind that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was, I did like a year and a half of that.
That's a huge regret in my career is like, I think back to the first label job that I got and I didn't have that perspective and that outlook. And I just thought the label was whack. Like I was like, this is so stupid. I'm wasting my time. I thought I was signing up for something else. And in retrospect, like I'm the asshole because it's like, so what? Like
just take what you can get out of it.
Take what you can get out of it and learn from all the things and learn how to deal with all the problems and solve the things and see what they're doing and learn from those systems and build your own. And I was too much like literally of like, what does this represent? What do I get out of it?
For sure.
So yeah, like that's so crazy. You got that advice. That's so huge.
Yeah. And then,
so then what happens?
I get promoted to the way Tom's, it's split up. You have majors, right? So the way you account, so you're in retail marketing is all about the marketing we do at our retailers and retail like built Tom's as much as brands want to be like D2C.com, whatever, like Tom succeeded because of Nordstrom.
It was a different time too.
Different time, but like even now, like the amount of like Nike had to pull back on how much retail they were doing. This is in like their like last investor call or whatever, because they were like selling so much through retail and wanted to be more online.
Whoa.
Right? Just shoes sell in person. People want to try on shoes. Yeah. Everyone comes in 12 sizes. Like it's just how it is.
It's true.
Yeah. Retail is broken up into majors. And then boutique, right? And boutique's broken up into action and fashion, right? So like that's the way we did it. Other people will do it different ways, right? Maybe they'll do like tier 0, tier 1. That's like the Nike way, right? Of like the greatest shoe store in the world down to like, mom and pop, warehouse shoe sale. Yeah. I got promoted to do the retail marketing manager for majors. So I was like Nordstrom, Journeys, and at that time Whole Foods sold Tom's. So Nordstrom, Journeys, Whole Foods, Neiman Marcus, and then we were going to launch Bloomingdale's.
Whoa.
And so I was like 22, I think at that point. It was very funny because I think they were like nervous that they like not nervous. They thought the team would be nervous, like letting me do that job. But Garrett, who is my boss, was like my biggest fan, was fully behind me. Jill, his boss, was fully behind, and they were just like, I didn't like apply for the job. They were just like, all right, you're doing this job now.
Yeah.
Like
also,
Micah can do this thing.
Moment in that, shout out to the people like that don't think about age, but they just see capability and work.
They're incredible.
Like, isn't that nuts though?
Yeah.
I think about that now because now like being 30 or whatever, you see the people that are in their early 20s and they're just different. Like they give a shit. They work so hard. And like shout out to the people that don't judge people off of age and give those opportunities. Because look at what that does.
Yeah. I mean, I think Garrett had to do it himself too. He was like 20 running like all of retail marketing.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right. And like the whole reason Tom's had like the whole like reclaimed wood aesthetic was because like they had to go reclaim wood to make things.
Yeah.
Like straight up, like you're talking about things out of necessity. Like that's like a necessity choice.
Right.
Like that and burlap because burlap's cheap.
Yeah.
The amount of burlap I've bought from Michael Levine's downtown is like so gnarly. Like I would go and just be like, I want all of it. It was called like honey gold. Like I want all of the honey gold burlap you have. It would just be, I would walk out with like 6 bolts of it and have to like make multiple trips from the store and then just be like, give it to the creative team. Be like, all right, we're cutting this up to be like, whatever. It's a lot of that. So I end up doing retail marketing for majors. It's like going with the sales reps to Seattle to see Nordstrom. They're pitching them the line. Because all those people, like they're coming to trade shows, but you go show them the stuff directly. And then I would be like, hey, like, here's the marketing plan that we have to help you sell through these shoes. If you buy into the Movember collaboration, here's all the stuff we're doing for Movember. We're going to have our founder do a personal appearance at the Brea Nordstrom. We're going to, Journeys. You guys are going to do, Journeys would put on this tour every year that was like all American rejects. And it would legit be in like Walmart parking lots around the country, mall parking lots.
What was the tour?
I forget what it was called. The Journeys
Wait, you're not talking about Warped Tour.
No.
Because like Journeys sponsored Warped Tour.
Journeys. I'll go back in history and find it at some point. But we were like, like you do stuff like that. So half it's like the marketing of, we want like hard aisle placement in the shoe department.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be where like the two, like where the walkway meets.
Yeah.
Right. That's like the best table.
Yeah.
Right. How are you going to merchandise this stuff? If you're just buying these, you got to buy some of this to do like attention. So like it got into like that level of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Nordstrom puts out catalogs it was every month, and they had like big ones. That was like, it's still massive business for Nordstrom. Again, it's like one of those things that feels so like, oh, like everything's online now, but like that was a big deal. And like you try to negotiate catalog pages, you would go in, do like, I would go to Nordstrom's before they opened, like when they were opening the one at the Americana, and do like a whole, like give all the shoe sales team like the pitch about Toms, how to sell it, how to do that. We would do contests. Whoever sells the most Toms the first month will get you tickets to whatever concert you want. I don't think you're allowed to do that anymore. You used to be able to do this thing called spiff, where it'd be like, yo, for every pair of Toms you sell, we'll give you $5.
Whoa.
On top of your commission.
Whoa. So like, yeah, everybody like, wow. So you guys like really figured out and dominated retail.
Well, I mean, but that stuff's like, that's like table stakes. A lot of that stuff. And like, we wouldn't do it because we were trying to do it like, we're a little different, like one of those, but you like slowly. And so like, I came into that for like the last like 6 months of being like absolutely like popping and like learned so much about like, there was just a lot of moving parts. Launching Bloomingdale's, we had like every window along, I think they're on 5th. They're on 5th or Madison Avenue. Like, normally amount of window displays that it covers like half a block of New York. If you've ever been to the main like Bloomingdale's on 56, it's so fucking insane.
Yeah.
It's 8 floors of like heaven. The subway stops in the bottom floor. There's like a subway stop in Bloomingdale's.
Wow.
Yeah,
crazy.
in the men's department. It's crazy. It's like, and it also makes you realize like retail is so fun. Like you go to like, again, it's just a thing that like good classic retail, we don't have a lot anymore. But like we did like John Goodman came and read children's books to kids in New Orleans, right? We had like, Blake interview people at this opening of the store. The OG, like I did undefeated events. Brandon Boyd, lead singer of Incubus. That's like the OG Tom's collab. He literally like kind of like Jackson Pollock, like a thing of canvas. We sent it off, had shoes made of it, and then launched it at Undefeated. Right? Tom's like one of their first shoe collaborations was with The Row. Like Ashley and Mary Kate or whatever. Like we forget that it was like very cool at one point, and did stuff, and all that stuff launches through retail, and it's incredible. And so did that for like another year and a half, and then was ready to like move on. Yeah.
So that's a really interesting moment. So you're how old when you move on?
23, 24. So
that now looking back, you're like, wow, that's so young. But that was your life, and you had all of your professional skills.
Yeah.
Was there a moment of like what happens next? And like, was that strategic, or did you just in your heart know that it was time to go do something else?
So in my heart, I knew it was time to go do something else. I'd started getting hit up by recruiters. One of them was like TaylorMade, which is Adidas's golf brand. And they're like, yeah, we want you to come do exactly what you're doing, like retail marketing for majors, but their majors were like the nicest golf courses in the world. And they were just like, you just got to go around to these golf courses and talk to them about TaylorMade shoes. And I was like, damn, that's pretty sick.
Yeah.
But like, and I like didn't like golf. Like I golfed when I was younger, but like, like I had done, they were like, oh, you have to move to Carlsbad. Like I wasn't going to move to Carlsbad. And Tom's had like kind of crested a little bit. As soon as you start not being able to anniversary your numbers from last year, retail becomes misery.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
So it goes from like top of the mountain stuff to like, and again, like this is my first experience. So I'm like, baby, this is what it's like.
Yeah.
Every buyer shows up to every meeting.
Yeah. Like you have the
people
hotness.
who have the last name Nordstrom will talk to you. Right. Like that kind of like, or you're just like, this shit's incredible.
You're like, yo, Mike, I'm at Tom's, and you're just like,
oh yeah, it's like incredible. It's like, come to the whatever part. Like, hey, like it is very, but again, like you just think you're like, because you're 22, you're like, oh, we're friends. This is like,
this is
everyone's
what it's like
friends.
forever.
This is what it's like, baby.
It's so fucking
cool. So like I had a very funny experience with that. And then it's like a battle when you're like down 30% year over year, and you're like, oh my God, like retail becomes very tough because then you're discounting product, and if they miss margins, they like, that's like they'll just ask you for like what's called margin booster, which is like, hey, we have to keep a 48% margin. We had to discount to this much. We hit 46 to get us to 48. We need 23 grand. You just got to write us a check for 23 grand.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, retail's crazy. So it's like, it's like a big swing. And so some of that's just kind of the cost of doing business though.
Yeah.
But yeah, we end up like, I'm kind of looking around one day and I'm just like, like all the people I loved doing this with are gone. Because it was one of those things where it's like, these are all the people you hang out with. This is like everyone you hang out with, your social group, the people you talk to on the weekend.
Yeah. It's like
you're here early,
tribe.
late, you
It's
travel
everything.
with. This is the group. And then Garrett, my boss, left. And that was like, and he was just like my number one. Like he was like my mentor, like still get so much advice from him. Like Jill was gone. One of my good friends, Drew, who I'm still good friends, was gone. Like the other people on the events team with me were gone. Like,
so it's like, what's the fucking point? Like you don't have your people.
And like the big lesson I learned in that is there were so many people. We had moved into like a new office where they are now. It's in Playa Vista, but like across from the Howard Hughes Center, like where the Whole Foods, nothing was there. Like that was like a swamp. And then Shia Day, that big agency, is back to back with Tom's.
Yeah.
And we had like an amazing office. We'd kind of moved in there. It's like we were going up. And a lot of people who had been there for a while were like, oh, it's so different now. So different. Like, oh man, like I hate it. Tom's used to be like this, but now it's like this. And just like, I fell in love with it at a certain time. And that's on me. It's still a great place to be now.
Yeah.
I just had a different version of it.
Right.
So now isn't bad, but it's different than my version of Tom's.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
So it's time for me to go.
Yep.
Because I didn't love it the same.
Yep.
You can only give so much of yourself to like a company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like you want to be so
100%.
sold out for the company.
Yeah.
It was amazing, man. Like I went on a giving trip to El Salvador. Like like all that stuff's real.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. You like.
I think
really
there's like genuine knocks on Tom's, but it was like it did amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, it is time to go. It was so funny. I was just looking like across like the top floor one day, and I was like, I need to leave.
Yeah.
It was just like it just came.
Yeah.
You know. And like, it was no resentment, no hard feelings. So a lot of people get there and they're like, it's different.
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude,
well, then go.
It's a company, bro. It doesn't owe you anything. Just go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like what I told myself is like, they don't owe you.
Yeah.
Don't owe you anything at this point.
So
and
then
so
what did you do?
I had known one of my first trade shows, like second trade shows, someone came up to me. They're like, hey, I'm with this agency called No Subject. We're working with Impossible Project. They're trying to save like the last instant photo factory in the world. Here's this Polaroid camera. Will you document your experience of the trade show? I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I do it. I give it back to them at the end. They're like, oh, I want you to meet my boss. It's this woman, Chelsea, and she runs this agency called No Subject. They're based in LA. We end up like linking up at trade shows sometimes, like chat, whatever. I ended up like hiring them to help me launch Bloomingdale's, like do influencer stuff. She ends up breaking off, starting her own agency called Matte Black. I help her find like my roommate from college is her first intern.
Crazy.
Right. And then she ends up needing to hire some employees. My other roommate from college, one of my best friends, is her second employee. And then when I go to leave, like I start kind of talking to the people I know. I'm like, hey, Chelsea, like I think I want to leave. Tom's. And she's like, yo, let's get lunch. And then we went and got lunch like a week later. And she was like, well, would you want to work at Matte Black and run like strategy for us? Like, and Tom's didn't use agencies, so I didn't really know a lot what agencies did.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, I'm sick of working on one brand, talking to one audience, doing the same thing.
Yeah.
The idea of like, oh, I can work on a bunch of brands.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. And I think to her, it was surprising that it was like, oh, this person, like someone's going to leave Tom's and come work at this like small agency.
Like startup vibes.
But like I had known, the funny thing is like, because obviously like her and I are like incredibly close now. And like, you know, I've spent so much time with her over the past 8 years or 9 years or whatever it's been. But like in that moment, we had only hung out like 5 times.
Crazy.
Right. And always in kind of like, oh, work catch up situations. Yeah. And we're just like, yeah, sure. Let's do this.
So it was a leap. It was like,
it was a leap. But in that moment, it was just like, bro, anything but Tom's like felt good. I don't know. I was like, I had belief in what we were going to go do and just like belief in myself of like, oh yeah, I can go make this. I can go make this whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I put in my 2 weeks at Tom's. I took 2 weeks off in between and then started at Matt Black as the director of strategy and culture,
which has now evolved.
It's now another, right? Same place that I'm at now.
Right.
Yeah. It's vastly different.
Whoa, but that's crazy.
We're on iteration number 5 of who we are. Yeah.
Totally. But in all reality, you went from internship at Volcom to crazy moments of Tom's and insane career growth.
Yeah.
To then Matt Black going to another and you building that, again, kind of starting at this very beginning of it and growing it to what it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just that part's fun. I can't remember, there's this great piece of advice or everyone likes becoming, no one likes being, where it's like getting a promotion is fun. Now having to do that job is not fun.
Yeah.
And I think when you're at somewhere you can grow, it's a continual process of becoming, which is nice.
That's
there
cool.
are plenty of moments of being, but it's fun to become too.
So I love that. That's it's so true.
Yeah.
So with another now, are you, because I'm so curious, I have a bit of experience with agencies now because of race service and everything that they've taught me, but it's still a world where there's plenty of agencies that I don't fully know. And, everybody kind of has a different thing.
You and I could start an agency on this couch right now. That's why, because it's just takes zero capital. You're we're an agency now.
Right. It's kind of like in music. It's oh yeah, I have a label. It's well, you just opened a DistroKid account, but sure.
Yeah. You have a label. Yeah.
I'm curious. The thing that comes to my mind is highly likely because it's this poppin' restaurant.
Oh man. So I feel there's some misnomers on because we're connected to it. So Chelsea, my business partner, her husband, Alex, and their friend Carrie, who's from Cafe Gratitude, opened that. Okay. Right. And so another's attached to it. Another is technically a partner in the business. And we did the branding work, all of that for it. But it has 0% to do with me.
Okay,
and
so it's you're not restaurateur on the side.
Fuck no.
You're not food and bev guy.
No. I can pretend to be all I want, but it has very limited things to do with me. So we have worked on plenty of restaurants. I am happy to critique restaurants to death, but
that's not that side of what you're
yeah.
So then another that makes sense.
Yeah,
the tie to it makes sense.
Yeah,
but it does seem there's pretty much no category of business that you can't, I think your strategy, you have now at this point, from what I've seen, the brands that you've worked with, touched a lot of different industries and kind of applied these skills. So what did that look like? You come from Tom's. Did you have a framework where you were unfazed by it? Did you have strategy yourself of I want to align with these brands? Was this a natural thing? This is interesting.
I don't know, actually. That's I have a very hard time figuring out how I honed. I've always been jack of all trades, master of none.
Really?
Which is a bit what brand strategy is in some ways.
Yeah.
You can go to proper strategy agencies and those people are geniuses, Red Antler or something like that. But also their strategy is annoying where they're where you're all right, cool. We're going to launch a new coffee brand. And then the start of the deck will be coffee was invented and
oh my God.
And they'll go all the way back and you're on page 80. We're very much what you'll say on page 80, we'll just say on page 1.
Yeah.
Where we're here's a cultural truth and we're all here, right? Great, let's tell a story from there.
Yeah.
So there's different versions of it. But originally when I came to Matt Black started, when Chelsea started, it was an Instagram only agency, which is crazy 9 years ago. If you think about it, it was super early on. Instagram was oh, you're going to have to produce a bunch of images. If you pay us, we will do a photo shoot for you every month and we'll run your Instagram.
Incredible.
And all the photo shoots were back when Instagram was all right, here's 3 objects on a table and we're going to shoot it this.
The outfit of the day, men's
lay
fashion,
flat,
flat,
right, Instagram 1.0 kind of stuff. Incredible. But we were running the Instagrams of 15 brands at once.
Whoa, because you just had that cornered. You had just had it dialed.
Yeah, it was just a thing that everyone needed. needed someone to do this thing.
Yeah.
And so I came in and was very much okay, I can do strategy of how we should position. I learned that a lot at Tom's because Tom's was with every pair, we give a pair of shoes to a child and need 1 for 1. right? Like you had the message and you knew like the power of like, just fucking hammer this story. Hammer. Here's like this story of like kids we know, the places we give, the things that we've helped, the retailers that we're in. Like you just knew like, I just talk about like the brand story, but knew like start here, go here, do this. And I think that like other brands, when you come from that, like a brand that like the give is in like the DNA, new brands, you can just see where they don't have a story. They don't have like a base to stand on. So strategically, it's like, okay, like here's like how you could like drill down into something that's meaningful and not like give back meaningful, but just like even a position meaningful.
So like, what's an example? Like how have you learned to do that for companies?
Oh, dude, I'll start with a bad example.
Any
brand who ever comes to you and says like, we want to be the Patagonia of blank.
Incredible.
Like you're not like you're already lost. Like you're already lost because Patagonia started as like everyone sees Patagonia now and is like, that's who we want to be. Like, and they're like the protector of public lands. But they started, we all know this now, as a rock climbing company. Rock climbing gear.
Have you read the book?
Like, my people go surfing. Yeah. So like understand yourself as the rock climbing company first. And then you need a vision to the protector of public lands. Because it's also like, I promise you don't have the stomach to do what Patagonia does.
Correct.
I promise you. Especially if you want to be the Patagonia blank. Like either you're it or you're not. And as soon as you say it, not you.
Right.
Like you can be like,
then it's not genuine at all.
Well, like you could want to get back. You can want to be genuine, but like, you got to want to be the you of whatever category you're in. And just that the you version of you is built different.
So like when somebody comes to you and they say, I want to be the Patagonia of blank, you say, we gotta work on this.
Because I'm in client services, you go, okay, cool. Love that. Great. Like, so what do you stand for? Like, what do you love? What are you trying to do? But like to finish the Patagonia thought, like, you have to be willing that every time you've proved it, you like double down and prove it again. And every time that you're like not open Black Friday, you go like, you know what? Fuck it. We're not open Cyber Monday either. And you say like every time that they're like, you're just like, not only are we not open in our stores, like we're shutting our website down. We're going to take an ad out that says the president stole your land. Like stuff that's just like unpopular. I mean, like Nike's even willing to do that with like the Colin Kaepernick stuff. You know what I mean? Like that's not popular with so many people. Every time you think you're there, you got to double down again. And like you get to the point where eventually you just go, yeah, we're giving it the whole company away. It's crazy. Like, so it's
good.
like, I don't know, just like no one has the stomach to be the Patagonia of anything. So like you just can't be that. That's like being like, I want to be the Michael Jordan of basketball.
Right.
Like,
it's like, well, everybody does, but you're not going to do it.
So I think where we start with brands now is so much so like always start with dumb strategy, right? What's the top right corner if we had to imagine on the chart of where everyone else is versus what you think you do different. And like the big like secret is like so many of these brands aren't different.
Yes.
You do not have one. The only way you can differentiate is your visuals. We're going to come to a different visual world than anyone else has and try to show it in a new light. And we'll try to, and like, push brands to be like, how like radically inclusive are you able to be? Like how, like what are all the things that you want? Like you can be different by the way you show it.
It's just simply stated, not even being shitty. It's just like it's generic. Like these ideas in these companies.
Like why should like another toothbrush brand will probably start this year, right?
Right.
Why do we need another toothbrush brand?
Right.
It's give me a reason for another good toothbrush brand.
Right. It's like, we all need better oral health.
We already have that one already exists. It's Quip. Right, you know what I mean? Like, like I can
and in all reality, like, can you really say that it's any different? Like, is the toothbrush going to be reinvented?
No,
like, that much crazier?
Yeah. So my true opinion on this is like, if you're going to start a brand, the most meaningful thing you can do is like the best design, the best whatever. All those things exist. What I can promise you is the highest paid like manufacturing workers. Everyone in our we have like a vertical supply chain, and we're going to pay everyone 20% more than they get paid anywhere else. So when you shop with us, like frontline, blue collar, anyone in the chain of people who normally don't get thought about are getting paid more because they're making this toothbrush. That's the only thing that matters. Straight up.
Wow.
So we legitimately don't need anything else.
Correct.
Brands wise.
Yeah.
I think that's like the most meaningful thing any brand can do.
Wow.
Is just be like, we are going to pay our people more. And like, if you like the design, great. If you like, we're going to try to design something great. Will we put some functionality in that helps you have better oral health? Awesome. Right? Like some of that stuff's on you anyway, chief. Like you got to want to brush your teeth. But just like the most meaningful promise any brand could make is just like the highest paid, like we are going to above industry standard,
right?
Pay everyone from like the, it's just like direct trade farming, right? Like everyone from like where we're sourcing through most important, like people who are from like manufacturing,
right?
Out to when it goes out to distribution, like no longer in our control, like those people will be paid well.
So I love that. And I think that's so great. Do you think that is, I feel bad saying it, a cyclical trend? Do you think that right now that is the most meaningful thing that you could do? Or do you think that that's a timeless lesson?
I mean, like I'm definitely like sugarcoating it because someone could come in and be like, there's other things like, like Tony's, like there's slave trade in chocolate. There's child labor, there's slave labor in the chocolate industry. We are going to make like the most responsible chocolate bar, and we're going to call out other companies and show them that they can make their bars without slave labor or without child labor. Sorry.
Crazy.
Like there's all kinds of versions of being meaningful. And I think people can find them. I don't think it's a trend that people should have like fair wages and be able to make a living no matter what their job is.
And you look at like an Amazon, and like Jeff Bezos gets so much shit because it's like his level of wealth compared to some of these things. That was such a huge thing.
Yeah. And I feel like even that's a different conversation. Like, bro, if you have $1 billion, like good for you. Like I know there's this idea of like billionaires shouldn't exist. I do not know enough about it to have like a personal opinion on it.
I'm saying from a cultural standpoint, like that is something where it's like I could understand what you're saying, because without people being educated, it's just like that is a narrative of like, oh, this guy has a bunch when his other people don't. So if you're telling a story where you're like, hey, everybody that's a part of this is taken care of, like.
Yeah. I mean, because right now it's a very fair criticism of him. You know what I mean? Like and I don't know, but like I don't think Amazon warehouse workers are like, get paid more than paid more than any other warehouse worker.
Right.
Maybe they do. And like again, like this is all like an imperfect point of view on my spot, but like when we like try to find brand narrative and brand story now, it has to be in the product. That's like that shit was sewn in from the beginning. And like the product told the story and was the story of like why we are full of purpose. And like now your product has to be the thing that also encapsulates your purpose in what you're doing. And so like all of your story should come from the product, and whether that be like the way it was designed or how it's meant to be used or what it empowers you to do. And like a lot of people like will BS that thing, or like a lot of beauty brands, they're just like, oh, it's about like, it's not about changing who you are. It's about being like the most confident version of yourself. Right. Which is just a version of saying like, we're trying to make you feel good about wearing makeup. We're still trying to sell you makeup.
Yeah.
Which is like, and also there's like skincare, which is different than makeup. And like, there's good versions of all of this. But I think like, just like anyone, it. I remember talking to these kids when we were doing this like high school mentorship program. And it was like, how do you work in brand? I was like, Nike? Yeah. Adidas? Yeah. Do you know the difference between the two? Like what kind of person would wear this versus what kind of person would wear that? Like, yeah. I'm like, well, you're in brand marketing. That's it. It's like,
damn.
You just know it. Like you live it because they're all lifestyle brands.
It's funny. Like that thought is something that I love that you say that. And I think that a part of this podcast to me is I want to remind and empower people that they probably are qualified for the shit that they love.
Bro,
but it's fucking crazy. Like as you explain it, we discredit how simple the fundamental, like, you take the logos off, that thing you're saying. If you authentically give a shit about any of these industries you talk about, you can probably just snap answer, say the thing that's cool and why it's cool. Or like the way Patagonia breaks all these rules. It's like, is it really all that like crazy strategic, or is it more just being like, well, like if we're trying to protect this and we're trying to make less of an impact, here's a way that we can do that. And it's just like these.
Yeah, we're going to start
our
own second hands. You're going to be able to take the clothing back and sell it again.
Right. Or it's like, I don't know. I think skateboarding's an incredible space because it's, again, like pretty authentic punk rock. Like there's a lot of like, I think a lot of brilliant people have come out of skateboarding.
For sure.
But like it to me comes back to just like, well, what do you think is cool? Like if you're a part of it and you see something that's cool and you live and breathe it, you can probably state the things that are cool and aren't cool.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe I'm doing a poor job of it, but just like the simple gut check answer to some of these things is sometimes the most valuable thing, and people lose sight of that.
Yeah. And I think everyone has their own like BS meter. Having purpose and meaning isn't always like a sure sign to success. Like often it's like, road to hell is paved with good intentions kind of thing. If you have a good idea, you're trying to make something that's like different, you're trying to work on, or you're working on brands, you're at an agency, you're at a brand yourself, you can find purpose and meaning in so much of what you do. And even if you come to a place where like the brand didn't have a big purpose, you can put on events, you can put out products, you can do things that have purpose and bring like a lot of meaning and make people feel like really special.
Yeah.
And like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Bar like being able to make sure that like warehouse and factory workers are getting paid more, being able to make a person who like comes to an event feel like welcome and seen and like, like feel like they have a place they belong. Like that's the next best
special.
thing.
Yeah.
That's like legitimately the next best thing outside of it.
No, you have a lot of really good core fundamentals there.
Yeah, maybe. I think that stuff's hard to do, but still possible. Like it's not just like, oh, I'm at a brand that doesn't like, I'm at Microsoft, like I have no purpose. That's not true. There's still a bunch of great stuff you can do.
Okay, so we talked a lot about your story and everything that led you up to this point. And you shared a little bit on another in the beginning and kind of painted the picture. But the last thing that I want to do is have it be, okay, cool, this guy used to work at Tom's and here's this whole thing. Yeah. By the way, here's 8 years of a career and you're killing it, but whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I guess what if you were to look now at your career and like what you've done with another 8 years in, what are some of the most valuable things you've learned or meaningful things you've done, or just like kind of like somebody who is interested in your path and interested in being in a position like yourself, like what is that advice or what's that look like?
Yeah. I think like there's interesting agency specific advice where like the most, like if you are in client services or you work at an agency or you are someone who works with brand, this big idea that I always talk about is like the illusion of calm. And that the most important thing you can provide to whoever you're working for is the illusion of calm. And that means that like if two competing agencies both got a brand to the same point, they will be happier with the outcome the smoother it felt to get there, which is sometimes like that feels obvious, but agency culture can often be this like, you complain, the client's like this, oh, like there's all these fires, we're running around, it's last minute. And then you get to the end, you're like, oh, we pulled it off, guys. But like the more that you can not hide it, but like you're in client services, the whole point is like the dining room's quiet, the kitchen's chaos.
Bro.
Right. And I think agencies often are just like, the kitchen's in the dining room, baby.
We're all eating.
Yeah. And you're just like, they don't need to see this.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is bars. Like that's good.
Yeah. And so that's like, I came in and all I want to do is brand strategy, digital marketing strategy. I can tell you how to run your email, connect it to your ads, what ads we're running, all that stuff. And then ended up being like a lot more in business development, a lot more in like campaign strategy, how like brand positioning like that, because that stuff just like I wanted to get there.
I'm obsessed with
you
that.
Like grow,
it's so cool.
You grow into it. Yeah. You have to be able to take the logos off stuff and still know who it is. And there's a version of that like visually where I'm like, yes, that is a photo from, I'm trying to think, like one of the big ones in beauty for a long time was like Glossier, but like that's a Nike. I know that's Nike, the way they shot it.
Oh my God.
What it is.
Their brand identity is so strong.
And that's like
without anything.
Yeah. That's the visuals, but that comes from like great brand strategy. That's words on a page that is like so distinct that you're like, no one else would say this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that evolves over time, what have you. But I think like really being willing to like go after that stuff and say like, we're going to like craft this again and work this again until we feel like we found something that's truly like, we can say like, no one else would say this thing. There's no generic words here. We're not providing confidence. Like we're trying to do something else that's like totally unique.
Yeah.
The more that you're able to do that, the better. And yeah, man.
Maybe a question like that I think maybe anyone listening to this might have is, okay, so you've listened to this episode and you're like, damn, strategy matters and like all these things. How do I level myself up? Do you have questions that you ask brands or clients when you first start of like to define that why, or is it not as simple as that?
Like all strategy is creative, all creative is strategic. You know what I'm saying? Like, so sometimes people use the word strategy in like a really like, they'll be like, oh, our strategy is to do an event like this. If you can like check a box and do it, that's not strategy.
That's right? A task.
It's a task.
Yeah.
Or like it's a tactic, as it would be called, right? Like tactics help you achieve goals. Goals help you achieve strategies. Right.
Beautiful.
And strategies are like conceptually, like will often be like conceptually will be a bit loose, and you'll be like, all right, we'll know it. We'll know it when we got there, like when it happened. Like we need to own the men's market or something, whatever. But like when we start, like good creative strategy is the idea of like you can pull disparate ideas together and make something new. That's like one of the big ideas from like Pixar and how they do like Creativity Inc. or whatever that book was called. But I think like your strategy starts with like you live a full life, you have a lot of good references, like you come in, you hear about a brand and you put down everything on a piece of paper that's just like your opinion about this thing already. Right? And then you just like draw a line between like all of my opinions and things that I hold to be true already.
Yeah.
You look at that brand and you say, let me break this down into its fundamental parts, right? It's a restaurant. Okay, so like restaurant culture, it's in LA, Los Angeles culture, and it's like vegan based on and like draws inspiration from like kind of native Mexican cuisine. And you go, okay, I have 4 things that like I can piece together in different ways that I need to go do like non-biased research about like, you know, like what is this logo? Why does it look this way? Why, like, does food like this exist in LA? What's like the history of this food? And what you'll do is you'll find these strings about like, you'll be like, I was like 10 pages deep on writing about like the origination of like Catholicism in Mexico and like why that mattered to this restaurant.
Holy shit.
And at a certain point, you'll just be like, all right, no, this doesn't matter. You'll just be like, you'll be like, never mind. You go through the steps, but like, good strategy is about like sparking good creative. And so you need to just like cast a wide net and be like, here are things that could drive us, but you'll find it. Then you'll see your opinion, which is often like driven by like culture and your own experience. Then like deep kind of like first person research of like, oh, I'm in like reading about these things. Like I've broken out kind of what I believe to be the core concepts and just gone down rabbit holes on it. And then just say, okay, great. I've come to a place, right? I have some facts, right? I have some facts over here. We're going to try to combine the multiple like, you know, facts to make like a brand truth. Like these things are, if I know this thing about culture, if this thing is like true in history, like in this moment, we put all those things together. Here's like a thing that is true about this brand or true for this moment.
Yeah. Using your restaurant example. So you're in Los Angeles, you're making a vegan restaurant. It's inspired by these different cultures.
I'm specifically talking about Gracias Madre, but
funny.
Yeah. That's like that reference of just like, we can do whoever, but
I don't know, but like that's cool. Like so, then those things come together to be your version of it, and it's authentic and it's true because of all these things that you can stand by.
Yeah, and you have to like pressure test all those things and be like, all right, cool, like, yo, this whole like Catholicism thing doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to do that. The worst thing you can do in strategy is just go in with an idea and be like, I'm only going to research things that confirm my idea. About this thing.
You're just confirming your bias.
Like confirmation bias. Like you're just like, I'm only, no matter what. We've been guilty of that. You know where you want it to end, and then you try to do the research backwards
completely
to be like, oh yeah, this was such a great idea. That we had like first thought, best thought kind of thing.
I struggle with this one of I'll have industries or things that I'm passionate about, and you could probably save years of your life if you were just focused on money. But I think about how funny it is that never in my life have I stopped and been like, is this market viable? Like this giant market, this thing that I'm excited about, take like podcasting or whatever. Did I at one point compare it to like the industry and how much money that industry makes to anything else? Absolutely not. I was just like, podcasts are fucking tight. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, I make fun of myself.
That's
for
probably
that.
the best way to approach something.
It's very authentic.
I think like the only way to succeed is to be like too dumb to know you're going to fail.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, I do think that's a funny side.
Yeah. I just like, I don't know, if you're willing to be consistent with it, putting all this work, I think that's kind of the key to success. Like everyone else will give up before you do. And that's like the way that you have now won. We're on version 5 of another at this point. Like started as social only, moved into campaign work, got really known for like narrative driven visuals of like photo and video.
Yeah.
First big one we did was like shooting this big like holiday campaign for Lululemon in Norway. And it's like this, and then like did a lot of stuff from there, got Nike, we'd gotten W Hotels, working on Marriott, like ended up being like the AOR for Shopify. We worked with YouTube and Google, went around the world shooting like YouTube Rewind, like that big like recap they do at the end of the year. Like, and it just like, it grows.
Yeah.
It grows. And you're just like putting out creative and at that same time, like putting out your own IP and just like, it comes to you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's been a lot of years at this point with a lot of different, like now we've kind of found like, okay, it's branding and campaigns.
Yeah.
Whereas before we were like, yo, we'll do social. Like we were running like social for Minions at one point. Like and then you kind of like, you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You know, but like
take yourself out of it. You say it to yourself back and you're like, how the fuck did that happen?
Yeah. That was a funny one where you're just like, but it was cool. Like that team's amazing. Like Illumination's amazing.
I have a question that I think about with business, and I think it's like a skill. Like if I were to like teach a college class of like actual things you need to know, do you think that so much of this industry now is like you have to be able to make a remarkable deck?
Bro, our decks are impeccable.
I think that that's a thing. Like I think if somebody were to come to me and they were like, what's a thing that I could learn that would benefit me so massively? I'd be like, learn how to send short emails and make a great deck.
Yeah. Another would be the most successful agency in the world if the quality of your deck was the only thing that was.
Isn't that funny though?
Bro, we put too much effort into it.
It's so funny.
They're very dialed. If you can't communicate your strategy, it's a bad strategy.
Yeah.
My legitimate philosophy on strategy work is it needs to be like a party fact. The way that Malcolm Gladwell writes books, like whatever you think about him, the way that you internalize it and then repeat it to people,
dude,
that's strategy.
That's what I'm saying.
And so like if I can get you onto one sentence that's like, our strategy is blank.
Yeah.
Is that we are going to like, we are going to become like the modern generation's third place. Like the idea of like you had home, work, and you had a third place that was where you did like your half social, half like work life.
Yeah.
Like we're going to become this. If you just have that thing and you all look around and you say, is this decision making us that third place? Or is like this decision making us like Southwest whole thing, like the most affordable airline?
Yeah.
Then we don't do it, right? Like if you have to legitimately refer back to the deck to remember what your strategy is, not great strategy, right? In my opinion.
Yeah. Whereas if you have like this like ethos, this thing that's
like, we have a North Star.
Yes.
And like it can be complicated underneath that, but I want you to go to a dinner party and like be able to like remember it. It should feel like pop psychology.
Yeah.
Right. It should feel like something that's not like the coffee shop stuff. Like I was saying before, like, like I know that you're launching like a new, like, ceiling fan company, but let's talk about like why humans want to be cool in the first place.
Yeah. You're just like, fuck, dude.
Stop.
Yeah. Dude, Tony Hsieh wrote about that in Delivering Happiness. He talked about how company culture, like if it's good and simple when your employees make fun of it. It's so known that like your ethos that you can make a joke about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, that's solid.
I mean, I did did you ever do the Zappos tour? Like
I want
back
to
in
so
the day?
bad.
I don't know if they still do it.
Fuck, really?
We did it. I did it when I was like a lot younger in Vegas. Shopify is like the best that I've seen recently. Like company is incredible.
Really?
They're like I mean, I know they had a rough go of it like the last like year.
Yeah.
But like when we came in like 2019, just like the way that they were like sold out for what Shopify was doing, it's incredible.
I saw they had a billboard on the 10 and it said congrats to Fashion Nova.
Rough.
Wait.
Yeah, man. Wait, what's your positive about the Fashion Nova one?
Well, okay, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
To me, I don't know anything about Fashion Nova.
Yeah.
I just saw that and I was like, oh, that's pretty smart. Like,
for sure. Like they're like just
congratulate. Like that to me was marketing where I was like, oh, that's sick. Like as their thing to just say like, yo, shout out to this, keep growing.
Yeah. So love that.
That's all I took away
love
from
that.
it.
So like,
I didn't know there was even controversy around it.
There's not controversy around it. It's just the idea of like, they're like the number one fan of merchants, right? So their whole idea is they're merchants, anyone who sells something. So their idea is be merchant obsessed. They're all about like, how do we support the people who sell using Shopify?
Yeah.
We are merchant obsessed.
Yeah.
And we will do like, we are in their corner. We understand what it's like to be them. We are here to support them, whatever they need. And like Shopify is like the counterpoint to Amazon, right? In that it is like, Amazon is like evil, Walmart's evil, Shopify is about like
for the people.
They're like fiercely supporting independence, like independent brands. Etsy is for people who aren't serious, right? This is for like, you're serious. This is gonna be your life, and we're gonna change. You are going to have the power to change your own life because you're going to run your own business.
Yeah,
and like I think that's really meaningful. And like Fashion Nova, I say this as a person who's like very limited context, but it's like fast fashion, which is like the epitome of waste, the epitome of like stealing other people's designs.
Funny.
And so like,
I don't know that like honestly.
Fashion Nova probably makes Shopify so much money. And it's like so cool that they're doing that, but it's just like, they've done other
of
times
all people to support of any name that they could have shouted out. That was
they're doing this by their headquarters, but like they've done times where they've shouted out like, you know, they've shouted out like whatever small sporting goods store in like Twin Forks, Idaho, you know, so like they've done like, I'm fully in on Shopify, but like I saw that billboard.
That's funny.
Someone in our office literally thought it was ironic. Like literally came in and thought they were making fun of Fashion Nova because we have such a different view.
No way.
Right? Yeah. And so we were just like,
that's funny that
Fashion Nova.
Yeah.
All right. I guess. Yeah.
Damn.
I don't know. 10 million orders though. That's pretty big.
Yeah. It's
big for them.
Yeah. Dude, I think we did the damn thing. I mean, there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah.
And I like, this is one of those ones where I just, as I am so I'm so excited about this and I could talk about things like this forever. Sure. So I try to be considerate of time, but like maybe we come back to some other episode on a very, very specific topic. But for your story and for this episode, is there anything that I missed or like where can people find you type beat?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the only other thing is like a couple years ago, we started a business called Candid that was, our agency does a lot of photo shoots, but they're very expensive. Like brands need more content than ever. And so we started like another agency that built a creator network. It's 1,500 people and we can shoot images and video at flat rates. Like we do like $120 per photo, $700 per image. Yeah. And so that's
brilliant.
Yeah. So it's like, let's say you do like a big campaign photo shoot with another, and then you get like kind of your always on stuff from Candid Network. And so,
it doesn't need to be this super intentional campaign with this crazy studio budget.
People don't care anyway. People want like you on your phone, like doing a selfie video about how great these microphones are or something.
Holy shit, that's so smart.
Yeah.
And then you're also empowering a bunch of creators to give them these jobs everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody wins.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's like a separate business from another that I actually spend the majority of my time on now.
Whoa.
Even more than like starting this year, moved away from being full-time at another and really put more time into Candid.
What I love about that though is you have another business that can support it in such an authentic way. Because if that were to be standalone, I'd feel like it's too DIY. Like I'd be like, why you?
It is funny. It's like there's competitors in the market. It benefits from being attached to another. You're right. It definitely benefits. And when you use both in tandem, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's sick. And I think that's better for creators.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, yeah, cool, I'm part of this thing, but it's tied to this bigger thing.
Yeah.
And if you were to work with a creator in your network and they were to kill it, then maybe they come on and do the big campaign. And it's like, I feel like that it's just like everybody wins more when it can tie to something even bigger.
Yeah, I feel like there's that version of it, which is amazing. We have people who like, a lot of our creators just have real jobs. They're like accountants or they're like whatever. And it's just like, oh shoot, this brand's going to pay me to like, I'm going to get 3 pairs of Nikes and like, I just got to take a few photos and get paid. Like that's incredible.
Yeah.
And so that's been really fun and has like a whole set of like lessons on its own. But yeah, that's what I'm excited about now. Like people can go, it's only another.co, candidnetwork.co to see like stuff that we're doing. And then just Micah Heykoop on.
Done.
But you are not going to learn anything from me on social media. Yeah. So I much more encourage follow only another rather than me. You can also check me out. You're mostly just going to get me like reposting my wife or like sharing
she's out
outfits.
Here taking over the world in a racing career.
Yeah, she's killing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, this has been fun though. Awesome. Thanks for letting me talk about Toms for 45 minutes.
No, dude, thank you for real. Like this is for me, when I'm this far in, I've done this many episodes and I can learn from somebody that I really respect that has a different career. I get really excited about that. Like this started in music and it was a lot of artist come up stories, but I want it to grow to be so much more than that. And if I can share stories of anyone in a creative industry that's killing it, doing something they love, the more I feel like guests come on and share what they do, I think it shows people what's possible. So I get really excited when it can be somebody with a different take this far in. So thank you. Like you've added so much value to the podcast.
Of course. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Hell yeah.